Hi everyone, welcome to our Boring Enterprise Nerdletter discussion. It's as usual me, Elena Perfilieva, and Paul Moderman is here with me. Say hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
And hi, Paul.
It
And
never gets old.
yeah, never gets old. It's like that joke keeps on giving.
Uh,
So as usual, we every 2 weeks we gather here with with humanity, with all humanity watching attentively, in anticipation of the next issue of the.
setting the Nielsen ratings on fire with
Yeah,
our.
exactly. New York Times is like eating popcorn right now out of the huge bucket, just
Oh, why
waiting.
why are
In
we so
like
snarky
we
right now,
cannot
man?
stand suspense.
Uh,
Like what will we write about in the next issue of our Boring Enterprise Nerdletter? So it's an exclusive preview. If you are watching this before the newsletter published, this is exclusive preview for you of content of tomorrow, like literally this
yeah,
time. So I will go first, and I will turn it over to Paul so that he can talk about his story. So we
right
always
on.
have 3 stories each, but in this video we sometimes share bonus content, another bonus to be subscriber. And in this case, I will have a small bonus story, so it will be at the
Ooh,
end of my stories. So my kind of piece de résistance, it's about SAP code vulnerability analysis.
mm,
Um, there was I think it's a pretty recent blog posted here. This one talks about, it gives you all the details about the tool. It talks about all the steps to activate, etc. But my piece will be basically asking SAP to finally make this free tool for everyone. Because
mm,
in case you didn't know, this is actually, even though it technically exists in all the SAP systems already, it's separately licensed product. So
I didn't know that.
that's why it has this, yeah, it has this activating step where you basically
Mm,
say like, hey, I read this note and I'm gonna pay you for this or whatever, and I'm just gonna go ahead and activate it, which
mm,
which makes it just double silly to make this paid product because it's not even installed separately. There is also major FAQ blog, which is really good. Peter Barker writes, I think, some good posts. It's from 2020, you can see, but I think it's still current. And I'm guessing that SAP probably most likely using the same tool to check their own code. I mean, that would seem like logical step to me.
mm,
So makes me wonder, like, so you have it, and it says in this FAQ, it's been available since like around 2014. So
mm,
I think that development that was done for this tool, it's already been paid for like many times over, and
mm,
it's probably not really expense for SAP to maintain it because, again, I'm guessing they're just using it themselves anyway.
mm.
If they don't, then I would like to have their tools because I suspect they must have some tools. So why not share with others?
Yeah.
Um, so, and the same question has been asked for by several people at least before. So I will try to ask it again. I don't know. Maybe we'll get it finally. I will bring my. I will state my case. I will bring my arguments, and then I don't know. Then let's destiny take over. So
Raise a fist in defiance and let your voice be heard.
exactly.
Do you
Maybe.
do you hear the people sing,
Yeah.
Elena? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and then my next piece will be more of a kind of a thought leadership type of type of content that I have been into lately. It's a blog post by, who's this guy? All right, so some kind of dude, I forgot his name somewhere. Here you go. So Will, his name is. He has obviously last name.
Mm,
So he is, I checked his LinkedIn profile. He is some kind of CTO right now at, I know, one of the big IT companies in San Francisco. He started as, he worked as a software engineer for some time.
mm,
Then he went on to management positions and like director of development. And he worked at Stripe, is one of the,
mm,
I believe, big companies, at least the names that
mm,
most people recognize. And then he just went, to different companies to work in C-level positions. I typically, to be honest, I'm personally not hugely interested in the content that C-level executives kind of post. For multiple reasons. First of all, I'm just not really, I do not circulate in those circles, so that is just not my world, and many times it's just not relevant to me personally. And
Yeah.
also in some cases, I feel like these folks, they kind of, because they live in their own kind of world, they also have almost their own language, and it's just sometimes just very difficult to understand. It's like, yeah, like reading something foreign. But in this case, I think that even though he spent a lot of time in those managerial positions, it seems to me that he hasn't really completely lost touch with engineering side, because even though this document is really about an engineering strategy and it is written from the CTO point of view, or similar position, whoever is in charge of development at a major IT company, I could actually find many things that resonate with me and with daily work of any ordinary developers or software engineers. And in SAP world, we do not really, I believe, we do not distinguish between software engineers and developers. I think developer is most common name. So some interesting stuff here. What I found really kind of curious, he's quoting Richard Rummel here, definition of strategy, diagnosis, guiding policies, and coherent actions. I've never heard about this person, or that it is definition of strategy, but I actually used very similar kind of structure in one of my presentations, and I guess it's one of those cases where big mind think alike.
Right.
And that is, I think, actually a good approach to anything. You can do development in the same way. You always start with diagnosis. You always then you think about best practices, think about what's a
Right.
good ideas, what's not, and then you act on it. And if you miss any of those parts, it usually doesn't work very well, because if you miss diagnosis, you jump right into development and actions, and it usually comes out wrong. Or
Yeah.
if you do just you diagnose it, you kind of decide on something, but then don't actually do anything, that equally obviously is pretty useless. So it's a very long article. I will try to just provide my very high level kind of point of view on this subject, and on just highlight maybe some items that I found interesting. But it's pretty long. I think if there are some architects or someone maybe also developer managers, I think they probably find this article as a whole pretty interesting for themselves.
This is interesting too, because I think this person's, if they worked at Stripe and places like that, like they have a obviously a different perspective than sort of you and me in our day jobs anyway, where we're mostly producing like single or clumps of apps versus like a coherent single product where that is the focus of the whole company, right? So I think there'll be some good outside perspectives to bring in, right? Because like you can't help it. I mean, in our business, where both you and myself, we act as consultants and we write software for our customers sometimes. We don't get to do that stuff with, at least I don't get to, maybe you get to, but I don't get to use every single one of my preferences or my practices for different customers. They have their own needs, they have their own environments, they have their own rules that I have to go in and kind of like, I have to adjust my rules to follow the customer's rules for that. And so this will be a great, I think, like way to look at somebody who's doing the same thing but differently, and kind of get some of their wisdom out of that kind of thing,
I think it's always very helpful to learn from those just bigger IT companies and companies that do software as a business, because we typically live in the world where software is just a tool to run business, not business itself. So always interesting stuff. And my kind of a more of a fun story will be about shortwave, which
I saw this.
I just stumbled upon it, and it's like intelligent. They say intelligent email powered by AI. It's I'm gonna study more on this, but the cases that I have seen, it's basically summarization, for example, of emails, and also building emails into to-do list, etc., and some of the other email tooling. It works, I believe, quite well with Gmail, which we are using at where I work. And yeah, many smaller companies use it as well. As their kind of main email instead of Outlook and Microsoft tools. So I think it's a pretty interesting application. It's I think it's not none of
There's a free
they have some
tier.
free tier, so that's really helpful. So it's always nice to see like free offering from those applications, because it allows you to look into that, and that's very nice.
I saw a tweet yesterday, something like that, where this seems to fall into this category of, I think we're going to see a lot more workflows as we adopt more and more AI, especially into our writing and reading processes, where we'll have somebody say, hey AI, here's a list of bullet points, please write me a polite email about it. And that email will get sent, and the receiver will say, hey AI, please summarize that email with some bullet points. And it'll just be like a bullet point translation engine, essentially, right? Where
there's always that expression that I didn't have time to write short letters, so I wrote a long one. It's quite frequently the case for me when I just need to put all my thoughts in the email, and it ends up like a novel. So I think that to me personally, this will be a super useful tool. And my bonus story, that's not going into newsletter. I don't think it's kind of worth of writing. So there are actually two kind of sub stories that I think connected to the point. So this is Salesforce Strikes Back. Salesforce has been in the press lately. Because of their layoffs, and then some kind of, I don't know, some strange whatever going on with their revenue or financials, but then all of a sudden they are featured as a Salesforce, strikes back, and you can see this pretty telling image, I guess.
He's got a rockin' mullet though, that's for sure.
Yes, definitely.
There we go. So, business in front, CRM in front, and
party in the back.
Video games in the back.
Awesome. Sweet updo. And so apparently, I don't know, Salesforce, I guess, making a comeback. It's not like they left really, but
I was gonna say, did they leave?
In a way, I know they had been a bit in trouble for this. So the news about them lately were as follows. So they had layoffs. They also, there was a post like, oh, they laid off like thousands of people, but they paid like 10 million or some other obscene amount to Matthew McConaughey, I think, as some kind of
that's right.
Presentation for them. So not great PR for them, and I guess they trying to make comeback from that. So watch out. And meanwhile, in SAP world, is SAP really serious about CX? So CX would be essentially, it's what, like customer experience, I think.
Customer experience,
It's basically equivalent of SAP trying to do CRM stuff. And I don't know if SAP is really serious about CX or not. I mean, they will tell you they are probably, but I guess is the world serious about buying SAP CX
that's
products?
the question.
That's a different question that probably should be asked. My personal point of view would be, and most likely SAP will disagree, is I think they should just really fold it and just let Salesforce have it, and then just concede and say, okay, guys, like we're not going to do CRM, and instead just focus on their main ERP system and to make it just really awesome and create really awesome integration so that no one would ever think about encroaching on their territory again. That's what I'm kind of thinking.
So I have two reflections on that real quick. One is I need a little button on my on my streaming deck or whatever, where I can press the button and it'll go "Bah, bah, 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 hot take,"
Yeah.
because that was a really good hot take of SAP should just basically shit can it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the other thing is that yeah, I didn't see this from Diginomica, but like there was conversations I was in, the other day, just speculation on some stuff, just talking to somebody, and we had to go Google SAP CRM to even see what are they doing these days. And SAP has like a CX site, but it's hard to navigate and kind of get a sense of
Yeah.
what's actually going on there,
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
bit vague.
Yeah.
I think I opened that article and they're trying to do now like everything for industry is in fashion these days. It's a
Yeah.
new frontier, buzzwords. It's like industry everything. So I feel they're trying to do like CX for industries or something like that.
Yeah.
SAP CRM obviously is gonna go away. I mean, it was
Yeah.
never a really great product anyway. So that's to me, it's just like one more reason. Just just forget it. I mean,
Yeah.
just ditch the whole like
Just
CX. Just I don't know, offload it and make investment someplace else. I think
yeah.
that's they need some engineering strategies. That's what I feel. They should read that article and learn from that guy. I think
You're
that's a bit
connecting the
more.
dots on your stuff to them.
Exactly. So we should be on some kind of board of directors, Paul. Seriously. All right. Imagine that. All
Imagine
right. So
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all for me. And over to
Uh,
Paul for you
Over to
for
you,
your
Paul,
stories.
for your hot takes. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
Roger.
All right. So I don't know if you've seen this pop up on
Oh
Twitter.
yeah.
I
Nice.
actually installed it in a system and tried it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it works. So this is ABAP to UI5. This is
Mm-hmm.
creating UI5 applications in pure ABAP.
Mm-hmm.
So you can write ABAP code and it will emit a UI5
Mm-hmm.
application that really does have, I think, many of the features of actual like SAP UI5, the 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 normal path of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's under development still to provide all of the things because there's lots of ways that you could go around or work with stuff on the JavaScript side that you can't yet with ABAP and SAP. However, I was pleasantly surprised by how well it works with the sample applications. And I looking at the code, I can kind of see for some like simple to moderate use cases of some decent ways to go about prototyping and building things with this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you are somebody who is an ABAPer who is not a JavaScripter. The I don't want to call it a downside, but there's a challenge, and the challenge is that this is ABAP to UI5. This is not ABAP to web application.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you are writing ABAP that is spitting out more code that is then spitting out the application that runs, in a sense. So troubleshooting and finding errors and problems will not be any easier because you still have to understand what UI5 is and how it works to make something, to produce something, right? So just as a real brief example, this chunk of code right here, this is ABAP code. It's written in the ABAP language, but to know what's going on here, you still need to understand what UI5 does and how it does it.
Yeah.
So there's some, you're not off the hook, I would say, from learning UI5 or learning at least the principles and stuff like that. You're not off the hook. So this is a cool project, and I can definitely see if you do understand the basics of UI5 where this might maybe help you with faster prototyping or something like that. But there are definitely places where you can get to a larger project that was like, no, this is not enough. I need the real robustness of like UI5 itself to do this thing I'm trying to do. But I don't want to sound too down on it because I think it's really cool. And I think it's really just another example of how the SAP ABAP ecosystem is growing a little bit these days and picking up some speed and pace with its like getting more tools out there. You know what I mean? So I applaud this team 100%. for this tool set. And I'm quite sure that as time goes on, because this is like hot right now, that as time goes on, they will get more and more features into this and go from, oh, cool example, to like, oh yeah, we actually wrote an app in that, and that's what we're using, right? So kudos to these guys and good stuff, and it's all right about that for sure.
It's funny, you can see the name. I don't think it's a real name of the person, because and I can correlate that with a picture. So in Russian literature, Oblomov, it's actually last name. There is a novel named the same. You can Google it. There is an entry in Wikipedia. It's very famous in Russian literature.
Okay.
So the name Oblomov, it became synonymous with essentially person who is either like super lazy or just kind of sitting there and just completely kind of inert and cannot like decide anything, or just like totally like useless. I think I just looked it up when you were talking in English. They describe it as a superfluous man. So it's like totally useless person essentially. So here it's used as in kind of lazy, I guess. So I get it. I get it. I'm on to you.
Yeah, that's
And yeah,
funny.
so that picture
That's
makes
awesome.
it funny. Yeah, sweet.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, so the second thing I had written down, I don't have a think piece. I don't have a reference for it right now. And maybe I will, but what I wanted to do is write about, and I think maybe we've done some form of this before, I'm not sure, but I want to write about burnout in the context of tech/developers and, you know, in professional enterprise careers and things like that. It's something that I myself have experienced in some ways. In some ways, I still fight the tendencies of myself to fall into traps for it, you know. And I want to write about it to kind of like get a little bit more catharsis from that stuff, because even these days I still find myself with bad behaviors in certain ways for certain things that, if left unchecked, could lead to a form of burnout, right? And so I want to kind of reflect and offer some thoughts and advice on that stuff a little bit. Another thing is this one. This is one of a couple that I'm not sure about yet. I think I wrote a little piece about this magazine here.
Oh my goodness.
This is one of my sources that I go to for like the kind of the cranky negative point of view of things. While still kind of having, this is interesting because many of the people who write for this magazine have kind of a cranky negative view, but also they're still in that ecosystem. They still have that. It's kind of the way they show they care, right? Is by being critical, I guess. You know what I mean?
So like us.
Yeah,
sometimes.
kind of like us. Yeah. And so this guy has a piece about how he thinks SAP is considering a code split for S4 based on the on-prem versus cloud continued sort of seesaw scale, whatever you want to call it, in that world. I don't know whether that's an announced thing or not, but I suppose it wouldn't shock me either way to hear about plans for something like that, given the amount of consternation that still exists in the world for thinking about things cloud-wise, right? So in this case, yeah. So I don't know whether I'm going to write about this time or not. I don't know if I have a good hook on this, but an interesting take, could have interesting consequences for the universe if that actually did happen, like a full-blown code split kind of thing. We'll see.
I don't know. I kind of it wouldn't be kind of unheard of, and I get I get the point he's voicing here. I think it would be a little bit weird for SAP to do this at this stage after they spend so much effort into talking about it, the whole like rep thing. I totally see how they might make some concessions maybe and just be more reasonable, because we talked about it a lot, how cloud is really kind of more of a wishful thinking, at least at this point. I mean, there is future, but there is definitely legacy, and there are some specifics of large ERP enterprises that make it just not an easy step, I guess, for many companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, code splitting, it would be like defeating the purpose again, because the whole point, I mean, it wasn't the whole point. It's like to me the whole point of SAP going to HANA, so that they don't have to care about supporting like variety of different databases and make their code kind of database agnostic, so that they can take advantage of database and they do not need those variations. Because if you look back at the old notes that were like some fixes specific to like Oracle DB or Microsoft SQL Server, there's a lot of stuff that's like, okay, well, it works on this database but doesn't work on this one, or it's just a hassle. So why would you turn around and create the same kind of mess again for yourself? I don't know. So maybe that's kind of wishful thinking
so
on this editor's part. SAP
like I said,
done
I don't
crazier things before, though, so I wouldn't totally be surprised. It would be, to be honest, that'd be pretty weird, I think.
Yeah. So this like I said, this is I'm sort of cocking my head at it like this a little bit, but also like I don't think I have enough juice on this one to actually write anything up, so I probably won't do this one. But it definitely caught my eye, right? And I was like,
well, if you call your article SAP is falling apart, it's gonna catch some eyes. That's the whole point of clickbait. But then it's just another point, and I have written about. Remember, I have written about as a follow-up to question on SCN blog post about that embedded steampunk, because a person was asking like, well, in on-premise world, like, do we use steampunk? Like, do we not use? What do we do with this? And I've written a short story on it, and really this kind of code splitting, unofficially, it already exists out there. There is just old code, there is new that's called code that cloud compatible. They're not really split, but there isn't full backwards compatibility anymore. So to me, that is kind of form of splitting, if you will. And there is a lot of stuff that just works in on-premise, and we will continue use it in on-premise. But when customers move to the cloud, and by cloud again, we don't mean like being hosted like your infrastructure as a service cloud. We mean like S/4HANA cloud.
Like SAP is SaaS cloud.
Exactly, SaaS cloud. So when you move into that space, and then obviously a lot of old on-premise stuff just not going to be relevant anymore, or it will be replaced maybe by new APIs. One thing I think everyone would appreciate if SAP would start downporting more stuff, because that's what needs to happen, and that may be some of what this author would mean. But as far as like officially splitting and continuing to maintain two separate products, I don't know. I don't see it as an official announcement, and I'm not sure it honestly what would this accomplish.
Yeah.
I mean, for whom? Yeah. But I mean, interesting article nevertheless.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to look at, I think I'll probably write more about this, is there is just like there is, ASUG and SAP community and whatever that for all the things that you and I are much more used to. There are obviously communities for other things out there in the world. And C2C Global is that for Google Cloud. And so I kind of want to just take a look at that and kind of compare and contrast this with like ASUG a little bit in terms of what kind of content do they offer, where do they sit with their customers. This one is interesting because it has like some of their stuff is literally, how do I do SAP stuff on Google Cloud is part of their community, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure the reverse is true for SAP community stuff too, or ASUG stuff too, right? So there's some very, very close relational stuff. Yeah. So kind of either dive deep on one of these events or do a compare contrast. I'm not sure which I'll do yet, but I just generally I like the idea of getting my head inside other communities because I've tried to do that for Oracle and I tried to do that for and we talked to Dimitri about Acumatica community and that kind of stuff. Like I think it can be instructive just for us in what we're pursuing here to be understanding of how a multitude of communities kind of work in this enterprise software tech space, right? Because I mean, obviously for you and I, the biggest, the most impactful thing right now is like the SAP take on community and whatever, even if it's not our favorite thing in the world anymore. Like it still carries a lot of weight in my head for what does it mean to have an online community? What does it mean to manage things that way? So I want to see more of the outside world, so to speak. So this might even be the start of 2 or 3 pieces about various software tech communities. So I might look at Microsoft, I might look at, Workday or whatever, something like that too, just in terms of how they do their communities, what they do with those things, and see how that goes because I want to understand more about that stuff for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go, folks. These are our 6 stories plus some exclusive bonus content. And please subscribe to our channel and read our newsletter and check out other multitude of other social
listen to our
media channels.
podcast.
Yeah, listen to podcast, and we're gonna have a cookbook, I think, too.
Yeah,
Maybe
Yelena's dropping trap rap album or something. What do you call
rap
that? Trap.
album.
Yeah. It's like we're getting into all sorts of media.
Yeah, we're gonna be going all out. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.